I am Naomi, 32 years old, and somehow I am still recovering from the ultimate betrayal. Last Thanksgiving, my older sister drained $312,000 from my business and personal bank accounts right under my nose. She and her husband thought they had pulled off the perfect heist to fund their fake luxury lifestyle, but they made one fatal mistake that would legally destroy them just 24 hours later. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to a family member who tried to ruin your life. $312,000. The entire operating fund for my online cosmetics company and my 8-year-old son Malik's college savings were completely gone. I stood in the middle of my own living room staring at the glowing screen of my phone as the banking app refreshed again and again. Zero. The balance was absolute zero. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. The warm, comforting smell of roasted turkey and sweet potato pie from the kitchen suddenly made my stomach turn. I looked up and saw my sister Vanessa and her husband Trevor hurriedly pulling their designer coats from the hall closet. They were moving fast, throwing on their expensive scarves, looking exactly like two people trying to flee a crime scene before the cops arrived. $312,000, I screamed. My voice tore through the cheerful holiday music playing in the background. The cosmetics funds and Malik's college fund are completely gone. Vanessa froze with one arm inside her camel hair coat. She was 36 years old and spent every waking moment trying to convince the world she was wealthy. From her perfectly pressed silk blouses to her ridiculous country club accent, she was a walking illusion. Trevor stood right behind her. He was a tall white real estate broker who wore suits he could not afford and drove a leased car he was always 2 months behind on paying. While Vanessa looked slightly panicked, Trevor did not even flinch. He just calmly adjusted his cuffs and looked at me with that signature condescending smirk he always reserved just for me. He stepped forward, invading my personal space. "Naomi, you need to calm down and lower your voice," he said slowly, as if he were speaking to a hysterical child. "You are going to scare the rest of the family in the dining room. It is probably just an app glitch. You know how those cheap online banking systems are always crashing. Just call customer service tomorrow when they open." "An app glitch," I repeated, my voice shaking with pure rage. "Trevor, it literally says wire transfer completed 3 minutes ago. The money was transferred out of my account." I was holding my phone so tight my knuckles were turning white. "You both were just standing right behind me while I was paying the catering vendor." Vanessa asked to borrow my phone to take a group picture, and now my entire life savings is gone. Vanessa finally found her voice. She flipped her long hair over her shoulder and rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Naomi, you are always so dramatic," she sighed. "You make a little bit of money selling your little internet makeup and suddenly you think everyone is out to get you. Trevor is right, it is a bank error. Why would we want your money anyway? We live in a gated community in Buckhead. We do not need to steal from my little sister." Her words felt like a slap to the face. I had built my cosmetics brand from the ground up, working 18-hour days, packing orders in my garage, until I finally hit 7 figures in sales. I did all of it as a single Black mother to make sure my son Malik would never have to struggle. Meanwhile, Vanessa married Trevor and made it her life mission to look down on me. She loved to brag about his luxury real estate deals, but I knew the truth. I knew they were drowning in hidden debt. I knew Trevor was a fraud who used my sister to access my family's good name and whatever money he could squeeze out of my mother. And now they were standing in my hallway trying to gaslight me into believing that over $300,000 just magically disappeared into thin air. I stepped right in front of the door, blocking their exit. "Let me see your bank app." "Vanessa," I demanded, holding out my hand. "If it is a glitch, then you will not mind showing me your recent transactions right now." Trevor stepped between me and my sister, his smirk completely fading into a hard, cold scowl. "You are acting crazy, Naomi," he barked. "We are not playing these ghetto games with you on a holiday. We do not have time for this nonsense. We have to catch our business class flight to Aspen to close a massive real estate deal. People with actual careers have places to be. He grabbed Vanessa by the elbow and physically shoved his way past me. His shoulder slammed into mine, pushing me hard against the hallway console table. The heavy brass lamp wobbled and almost crashed to the hardwood floor. I stumbled, trying to regain my balance, but they were already out the door. "Have a great Thanksgiving," Naomi Vanessa called out from the porch, not even looking back. "Try not to ruin the dinner for Mom and the rest of the guests." The heavy oak door slammed shut with a deafening thud. The sound echoed through the hallway, leaving a ringing in my ears. I rushed to the window and watched them climb into their rented Porsche. The engine roared to life and they sped out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on the pavement. I was left standing alone in the quiet foyer of the home I had worked so hard to buy. My breathing was ragged and hot tears were finally spilling down my cheeks. Every dollar I had earned, every late night, every sacrifice, gone. I pulled up the banking app one more time, praying to a higher power that Trevor was right, praying that it was just a glitch. The screen loaded. Available balance $0.00. It was real. I was completely wiped out. The panic set in, wrapping around my throat like a vice. I had vendors to pay on Monday. I had a warehouse lease due. I had a child who depended on me for absolutely everything. I turned around to head back into the living room, my mind spinning with desperate thoughts of who to call first. The police? The fraud department? My lawyer? But as I turned, I saw the rest of my family sitting in the dining room. They had heard the entire screaming match. They had heard the door slam. But nobody had come out to check on me. They just sat there passing the cranberry sauce and drinking wine as if my entire life had not just been destroyed in the hallway. That was the moment I realized the true depth of the isolation I was dealing with. I was a self-made woman in a family that actively resented my success and worshipped my sister's white husband simply because he wore the right suits and played the part. I wiped my face, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I was not going to let them break me. I was not going to let Trevor and Vanessa fly to Aspen on my dime and get away with it. I did not know how I was going to prove it yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I was going to get every single penny back, and I was going to make sure they lost everything in the process. I just had no idea that the key to their absolute destruction was sitting right in the next room waiting for me. I turned away from the window, my blood boiling with an adrenaline rush so intense it made my hands shake. I was not going to let them just drive away. I was not going to let them board a flight to Aspen with my entire life savings and my son's future in their pockets. I stepped away from the window, determined to chase them all the way to the airport terminal if I had to. But before I could even take 2 steps toward the front door, a heavy hand clamped down hard on my bicep. The grip was shockingly strong, digging into my skin and jerking me backwards so violently that I almost lost my footing. I looked up and saw my mother Brenda standing over me. She had stepped out from the dining room where the rest of the family was still eating, perfectly content to ignore my cries for help. Standing there in her expensive church suit with her arms crossed, she looked like a towering fortress of judgment. Her face was twisted into a scowl of pure disgust. "Stop that jealous nonsense right now, Naomi," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. I stood there stunned, rubbing my arm where her nails had practically broken my skin. "Jealous nonsense," I echoed, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and fury. "Mom, they just stole $312,000 from me. Did you not just hear anything I said? They wiped out my business accounts. They took Malik's college fund. I have to go after them before they get to the airport." I tried to step around her, but she sidestepped, blocking my path completely. She leaned in close so her face was inches from mine, her perfume thick and suffocating. "You are acting like a crazy person," she snapped. "Trevor is a senior real estate broker, and they are living in high society now. Are you seriously trying to embarrass this family in front of the entire church community with your petty behavior? Do you know how hard Vanessa has worked to build a respectable image for herself? She married a successful white man who actually knows how to navigate the corporate world. And here you are making up wild accusations just because you cannot stand to see your older sister winning. I stared at the woman who gave birth to me, completely paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of her words. The racial and class bias dripping from her mouth was nothing new, but hearing it weaponized against me while I was being robbed blind was a different kind of pain. My mother had always worshipped proximity to whiteness and perceived wealth. When I started my cosmetics business in my tiny apartment, working day and night to build a brand for Black women, she called it a cute little ghetto hustle. When I made my first $1 million and bought this very house, she told everyone in her church group that I just got lucky on the internet. But when Vanessa brought Trevor home, my mother acted like royalty had graced our doorstep. It did not matter that Trevor had no actual assets. It did not matter that his real estate firm was barely staying afloat, or that he constantly borrowed money from Vanessa to keep up appearances. To my mother, Trevor represented an elevation in status. He was flashy, he was white, and he wore tailored suits to Sunday service. In her eyes, that made him untouchable, and it made me the bitter single mother who just needed to learn her place. "Mom, listen to me," I pleaded, trying one last time to appeal to whatever maternal instinct she had left. "This is not about jealousy. I am not making this up. I can show you the banking app right now. The money went directly into their joint account. Trevor does not have real money. He is drowning in debt. That is why they stole from me. If you let them get on that plane, you are helping them commit a federal crime." My mother straightened her posture, her eyes narrowing into cold, unfeeling slits. "I do not want to see your little phone screen, Naomi. You can easily fake those things with computers nowadays. You know what your problem is. You have always been ungrateful. You have this huge house and this business, but you still want to tear down your sister. Pastor Williams was just talking about the sin of envy last Sunday, and looking at you right now, I see exactly what he meant. Trevor provides for your sister. He gives her the luxury lifestyle she deserves. If your money is missing, maybe you just managed your business poorly. Do not you dare try to pin your financial failures on a good man like Trevor." The dining room behind her was completely silent. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, they were all sitting in there listening to my mother tear me apart, listening to her justify the theft of my life savings. And not a single one of them stepped forward to defend me. They were entirely complicit. They would rather let me lose everything I had built with my own two hands than disrupt the illusion of our perfect family. They wanted to keep drinking my wine and eating the food I paid for, while my mother sacrificed me at the altar of Vanessa and Trevor's fake wealth. A strange, cold calmness suddenly washed over me. The tears that had been threatening to spill from my eyes completely dried up. The desperate need for my mother's validation, the desperate hope that she would finally protect me for once in my life, just evaporated into the air. I looked at her carefully, perfectly coiffed hair, her expensive pearls, and the deep lines of resentment around her mouth. I realized in that exact moment that I did not have a mother anymore. I just had an enemy who happened to share my DNA. "If you walk out that door and cause a scene at the airport, Naomi," my mother threatened, pointing a manicured finger directly at my face, "I will make sure everyone in Atlanta knows how unstable you are. I will call the church board. I will call your vendors. I will tell them you are having a mental breakdown. I will disown you. You will have no family left. Do you understand me?" I looked down at her pointing finger and then looked her dead in the eye. The fear she expected to see in my face was completely gone. I stepped forward, forcing her to take a half step back. I reached up and forcefully brushed her hand away from my face. "You just protected a thief," I growled, my voice dropping to a low, terrifying register. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving my mother standing speechless in the foyer. The sound of her sharp intake of breath faded as I moved deeper into the house. I walked past the arched doorway of the formal dining room where the rest of my family was gathered. I could hear my Uncle George laughing loudly at some joke my aunt just made. I could hear the rhythmic clinking of crystal wine glasses and the soft scraping of silverware against fine china. They were happily feasting on the expensive catered food I had paid for, sitting in the beautiful home I had bought, completely unbothered by the fact that my life was actively falling apart just a few feet away. I did not even turn my head to look at them. I could not stomach the sight of their oblivious, hypocritical faces. I was completely alone in a house full of my own blood relatives. I moved into the sunken living room, and the heavy, oppressive silence of the space finally hit me. The pure adrenaline that had been keeping me upright and fighting suddenly vanished, leaving behind a hollow, exhausting weight in my chest. My knees buckled beneath me, and I collapsed onto the edge of the velvet sofa. I dropped my face into my trembling hands, pressing my palms hard against my eyes to stop the tears from falling. I was not going to cry over them. I had promised myself years ago, after my mother missed my college graduation, to attend a minor social event for Vanessa, that I would never shed another tear over my toxic family. But the sheer suffocating panic of the situation was impossible to ignore. $312,000. It was not just a number on a screen. It was 5 years of missed sleep and unrelenting hustle. It was all the times I had to miss Malik's weekend soccer games because I was in the garage fulfilling cosmetic orders by myself. It was the massive down payment on the new commercial warehouse space I was supposed to sign the lease for on Monday morning. It was Malik's entire college tuition fund. It was our complete safety net in a world that had never given me a single handout. Gone. Snatched away by the very sister who looked down on me and the mother who enabled her. I took a shaky breath, trying to force oxygen into my burning lungs. I needed to think logically. I needed to call the bank fraud department. I needed to call the local police. But my brain felt like it was wrapped in a thick, blinding fog. As I sat there, trying desperately to gather the shattered pieces of my focus, I heard the soft padding of footsteps on the hardwood floor. I quickly wiped my eyes and sat up straight, smoothing my dress and pasting on the brave, confident face I always wore for my son. I did not want him to see me breaking down. Malik walked out of the adjacent playroom. He was wearing his little dress shirt slightly untucked from the holiday dinner. He was holding his iPad tightly against his chest with both hands. He did not look scared, but his dark brown eyes were incredibly serious and observant for a child his age. He walked right up to me and stopped by my knees, looking up at my red eyes. "Hey, baby," I said, forcing a wobbly smile that probably did not look convincing at all. "Are you having fun playing your games? Why are you not in the dining room getting some more sweet potato pie with your cousins?" Malik did not answer my question. He just reached out with one small, warm hand and patted my shoulder. His gentle touch was such a stark contrast to the violent, toxic grip my mother had just used on me a moment ago. "Mom, do not cry," he whispered softly, his voice steady and calm. I handled it. I blinked, looking down at his sweet, innocent face. "Handled what, baby?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. I appreciated him trying to comfort me, but this was a catastrophic financial disaster, far beyond the comprehension of an 8-year-old boy. "Mommy is just dealing with some grown-up stuff right now. Everything is going to be perfectly fine, I promise." Malik shook his head, his expression turning incredibly determined. "No, Mom, look." He climbed up onto the velvet sofa next to me and placed his iPad directly onto my lap. I looked down at the screen, expecting to see his blocky Roblox characters or a Minecraft village. But it was not a game. It was his photo gallery app, and he had a video queued up and ready to play. I pressed the play icon, my brow furrowing in deep confusion. The video started playing. It was a screen recording. Malik loved using the screen recording feature on his iPad to capture his high scores or to record himself talking like his favorite internet gaming streamers. He had apparently propped the iPad up on the kitchen island earlier that evening, right next to the large fruit bowl. The camera angle was wide, capturing the entire busy kitchen area and the massive open-concept family room situated right behind it. At first, the video just showed Malik making silly faces into the front-facing camera, talking animatedly about his favorite comic book superhero. In the background of the frame, I could clearly see myself standing at the kitchen counter. I was holding my phone, paying the catering vendor just like I remembered. But that was not what caught my attention. Malik reached out and tapped the iPad screen, pausing the video. He then used his little fingers to pinch and zoom in heavily on the top right corner of the video frame. "Look at the big mirror, Mom," he said, pointing a small finger directly at the screen. I leaned in closer and my heart stopped beating for a solid 5 seconds. It was not a mirror. It was the massive 85-inch flat-screen television mounted on the wall in the family room. When the television was turned off, its sleek black glass surface acted like a giant mirror reflecting everything happening in the brightly lit kitchen perfectly. And there, in the clear high-definition reflection of the dark television screen, was my older sister, Vanessa. She was standing directly behind me, hovering dangerously close just out of my peripheral vision. The camera angle from the iPad bounced perfectly off the television screen, giving a crystal clear, unobstructed view of the front of my glowing phone and Vanessa's face. Malik hit the play button again, and we watched the reflection together in total silence. I watched myself swipe up to unlock my phone. I watched Vanessa's eyes lock intensely onto my screen, her pupils darting as she memorized my finger movements. 6 digits. She did not even blink. I watched myself finish the catering transaction, lock the phone, and set it face up on the granite counter. I remembered stepping away to check the roasted turkey in the oven. The video showed exactly that happening. The absolute second my back was turned, the reflection showed Vanessa lunging forward like a predator. She snatched my phone off the counter with practiced lightning speed. The high-definition iPad camera captured every single damning detail in the reflection. I watched her perfectly manicured fingers rapidly type in my 6-digit passcode without a single hesitation. I watched the phone screen unlock, illuminating her face. I watched her thumb quickly navigate to the familiar blue icon of my business banking app. Her face was completely twisted into a horrific mask of frantic greed and entitlement. She kept darting her eyes toward the oven where I was standing, making sure I was not turning around to catch her. She tapped the screen rapidly, navigating straight to the wire transfer menu. Because the reflection was so clear, I could literally see the layout of the banking app on the screen. She typed in her joint account routing number. She typed in the exact amount, 312000, $312,000. Before she hit the final confirm button, she paused. She looked up and locked eyes with her own reflection in the dark television screen. For one tiny split second, she looked terrified, like she knew she was crossing a legal line she could never uncross. But then her signature arrogant upper-class smirk crept onto her face, completely erasing any trace of guilt. She pressed confirm. She quickly locked the phone, set it back down in the exact spot I had left it, and smoothly pivoted away, acting casually like she was just admiring my custom kitchen cabinets. The video ended. The screen went black, reflecting my own stunned face back at me. I sat there on the sofa in absolute silence, my brain struggling to process the magnitude of what I had just witnessed. My 8-year-old son had accidentally captured a masterclass in grand larceny. He had captured the exact, undeniable digital proof I needed to legally destroy the woman who had tormented and belittled me my entire life. Vanessa thought she was a criminal mastermind. Trevor thought his white privilege and flashy suits made him untouchable. My mother thought she could bully me into submission because she assumed it was my word against the golden child. They had absolutely no idea that a little boy playing with an iPad had just handed me the key to their complete and utter ruin. I looked down at Malik. He was looking up at me, waiting anxiously for my reaction. "Did I do good, Mom?" he asked, his voice small and hesitant. The crushing, agonizing weight of despair that had been suffocating me just moments ago completely vanished into thin air. It was instantly replaced by a massive surge of pure, unadulterated power. My blood ran hot with a furious, vindictive energy that made my vision sharpen. I reached out and pulled my son into my arms, hugging him so tightly I could feel his little heartbeat against my chest. "You did amazing, baby," I whispered fiercely into his ear. "You did so good. You just saved us." I pulled back and looked him dead in the eyes. I grabbed the iPad and immediately emailed the video file directly to my secure cloud storage, to my corporate lawyer, and to my own personal email address. I was not taking a single chance with this evidence. I stood up from the velvet sofa, feeling 10 feet tall, and completely bulletproof. I smoothed down my dress and picked up my car keys from the glass coffee table. "Come on, Malik," I said, my voice ringing with absolute chilling certainty. "Grab your winter coat. We are leaving right now." Malik looked slightly confused. "But what about the Thanksgiving dinner, Mom? What about the pie?" I smiled, a cold, sharp smile that had absolutely zero warmth in it. "Oh, Thanksgiving is over, baby," I told him gently, guiding him toward the hallway. "We are going to the police station. And then I am going to make a phone call that will turn Aunt Vanessa and Uncle Trevor's luxury Aspen vacation into their absolute worst nightmare." I told Malik to run upstairs and grab his heavy winter coat and his sneakers. While I waited for him, I knew I could not waste the 20-minute drive to the police precinct without trying to stop the bleeding first. Every single second that ticked by was another second closer to that wire transfer clearing completely. I pulled out my phone, my hand still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and dialed the premium business customer service number for Chase Bank. I pressed the phone hard against my ear and began to pace back and forth across the large living room. I walked from the edge of the velvet sofa to the front window, staring out into the dark driveway, and then turned around and walked back. My heels clicked rhythmically against the hardwood floor, creating a frantic tempo that matched my racing heart. Through the open archway, I could still hear my family laughing and talking in the dining room, completely oblivious to the fact that I was fighting for my financial life just a few feet away. The automated voice on the phone system cheerfully wished me a happy Thanksgiving and asked me to enter my account number. I typed the numbers in quickly. The cheerful robotic voice then informed me that my current available balance was $0.00. Hearing it spoken out loud by the automated system made it feel even more brutally real. I aggressively pressed the zero button over and over again until the system finally transferred me to a live representative. The hold music was a smooth jazz tune that sounded incredibly out of place against the sheer panic gripping my chest. I paced faster, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Finally, the music stopped and a man answered the line. "Thank you for calling Chase Premium Business Support. My name is Marcus. How can I help you today?" "Marcus, I need you to freeze an outgoing wire transfer immediately," I said, my voice tight and urgent. I did not authorize it. It was completely fraudulent. My sister stole my phone and wired $312,000 out of my business account and my personal savings less than 20 minutes ago. You have to stop the transaction right now before it clears. I heard the rapid clicking of a keyboard on Marcus's end of the line. "I understand your concern, ma'am, and I am very sorry you are dealing with this on a holiday," he said, his voice perfectly trained to sound calm and reassuring. "Please give me one moment to pull up your account profile and review the transaction history." I continued pacing the length of the living room, my eyes burning. I watched my mother walk past the doorway carrying a tray of empty wine glasses. She did not even look in my direction. The sheer audacity of her betrayal still stung, but I pushed it out of my mind. I needed to focus on the money. The keyboard clicking on the phone stopped. "Ma'am, I see the transaction you are referring to," Marcus said, his tone shifting from reassuring to strictly professional. "A wire transfer in the amount of $312,000 was initiated to a joint account at another institution. However, I am looking at the security logs for this transaction. The wire was executed directly from your primary registered mobile device. It was authorized using your secure 6-digit passcode, and the location data shows it was initiated from your exact home IP address." I stopped pacing and stood frozen in the middle of the living room. "Yes, Marcus. That is exactly what I just told you," I explained, trying to keep my voice from escalating into a full-blown shout. My sister was standing in my kitchen. She watched me type in my passcode. When I turned my back, she took my physical phone and made the transfer. I have video proof of her doing it. I have a screen recording that caught the entire thing. It is fraud. Please, you have to freeze the receiving account. "I am very sorry, ma'am, but because the transfer was initiated from your trusted device and passed all of our internal two-factor authentication protocols, our automated fraud detection system did not flag it as suspicious," Marcus explained coldly. For all intents and purposes, the system sees this as a fully authorized transaction. The wire has already been processed by our clearing department. What do you mean it has been processed? I demanded, my heart dropping into my stomach. It has only been 20 minutes. You can cancel it. You are the bank. Just press a button and reverse it. Marcus sighed softly, a sound of genuine corporate helplessness. Wire transfers are essentially digital cash, ma'am. Once they are executed and accepted by the receiving institution, we cannot simply reverse them. The money has already landed in the destination account. We cannot freeze another bank's account without a formal police order or a court injunction. I felt a cold splash of reality hit me right in the face. The banking system was not designed to protect me from someone who had physical access to my unlocked life. It was designed to follow protocols, and Vanessa had exploited those protocols perfectly. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that by using my own phone on my own home internet network, the bank would just wave the transaction right through without a single security hold. I need to speak to your fraud department manager right now, I said firmly, refusing to take no for an answer. Transfer me to someone who has the authority to open an active fraud investigation. Marcus placed me on hold again. The smooth jazz returned, mocking my desperation. I resumed my frantic pacing, walking back and forth so many times I felt like a caged animal. Malik came bounding down the stairs, wearing his heavy, puffy winter coat and carrying his favorite blue sneakers. He sat down on the bottom step and started tying his shoelaces, watching me carefully. He could tell I was upset, but he stayed quiet, giving me the space I needed. After 3 agonizing minutes, a woman's voice came on the line. Hello, my name is Elena. I am a supervisor in the fraud division. Marcus briefed me on your situation. I understand your sister initiated a wire transfer without your consent. Yes, Elena. She stole $312,000, I said, feeling exhausted from repeating the nightmare. I need you to pull the money back. Elena's voice was sympathetic, but carried the exact same cold, hard facts as Marcus. I truly sympathize with your situation, ma'am, but I have to be completely transparent with you. Because the wire was authenticated by your device, we cannot legally pull those funds back today. I can open a formal fraud dispute right now, which will take 7 to 10 business days to investigate. But to freeze the destination account immediately, you must file a report with your local police department and provide us with the official case number. Once the police issue a warrant to the receiving bank, they can legally freeze her assets. Until then, our hands are tied. 10 business days. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. In 10 business days, Vanessa and Trevor would be in Aspen swiping their debit cards at luxury ski resorts, buying designer clothes, and dining at 5-star restaurants on my dime. They could easily blow through $50,000 before the bank even finished their preliminary paperwork. Elena, I have a video of her stealing it, I said, my voice dropping to a desperate whisper. I can email it to you right now. Just look at the video. I cannot accept video evidence directly, ma'am, Elena replied gently. You must give that evidence to the police. Please go to your local precinct, file the report, and call us back with the case number as soon as you have it. We will flag your account and do everything we can to assist law enforcement. I thanked her mechanically and ended the call. I lowered the phone slowly, staring at the black screen. The cold corporate reality of the situation was terrifying. I had been robbed, but the system viewed me as the one who authorized the payment. I needed the police, and I needed them immediately. I looked over at Malik, who had finished tying his shoes and was standing by the front door waiting patiently for me. Okay, baby, I said, taking a deep breath and forcing my shoulders to relax. Are you ready to go? Malik nodded vigorously. Yes, Mom. We are going to get the police to catch Aunt Vanessa. I grabbed my purse from the console table and walked toward the door. I reached out to turn the brass doorknob when my phone suddenly vibrated violently in the palm of my hand. I looked down at the screen. The bright, familiar ringtone cut through the silence of the hallway. It was an incoming FaceTime call. The name flashing on the caller ID made my blood run instantly cold. It was Vanessa. She was calling me from her stolen first-class throne. I stared at the screen for a brief second, watching my sister's smiling face pop up on the caller ID. I swiped the green button to accept the FaceTime call and held the phone up to my face. The screen buffered for a moment before the high-definition video feed connected. The image that appeared on my screen made the anger in my chest burn hotter than a furnace. Vanessa was sitting in a wide, luxurious leather seat inside the first-class cabin of a commercial airliner. The ambient lighting of the cabin gave her a soft, glowing aura, making her look like a celebrity posing for a magazine cover. She was wearing a plush cashmere sweater and leaning back against a crisp white pillow. In her perfectly manicured hand, she held a tall crystal flute filled with bubbling champagne. Trevor was sitting right next to her in the window seat, wearing a pair of expensive noise-canceling headphones around his neck and looking incredibly relaxed. They looked like a wealthy power couple heading off on a luxurious ski vacation. They did not look like two desperate thieves who had just robbed their own family member to pay for their fake lifestyle. "Hey, little sister," Vanessa purred, her voice dripping with a sickeningly sweet fake concern. She took a slow sip of her champagne and smiled right into the camera. "We are just waiting for the plane to take off, and I wanted to make sure you were not completely falling apart back there. You were acting so dramatic before we left. Did you call the bank and figure out your little app glitch yet?" I did not scream. I did not cry. I looked directly into the camera lens so she could see exactly how cold my eyes were. "It was not a glitch, Vanessa." I said, my voice completely flat and devoid of any emotion. "I know exactly what you did. I watched the video. Malik left his iPad recording on the kitchen counter. I have crystal clear footage of you looking over my shoulder, stealing my passcode, and wiring $312,000 into your joint account. The bank already confirmed the transfer went to you." For a fraction of a second, the smug smile completely vanished from Vanessa's face. Her eyes widened, and I saw a flash of genuine panic cross her features. She looked quickly over at Trevor. The fact that an 8-year-old boy had outsmarted her entire criminal master plan was clearly something she had not anticipated, but the panic only lasted for a fleeting moment. Vanessa took another sip of her champagne, and her arrogant mask slid right back into place. "Well, if the bank confirmed it, then I guess the money is officially out of your hands," she said, casually shrugging one shoulder. "You know, Naomi, you should really be more careful with your passwords. Leaving your phone unlocked around people is just irresponsible business practice. Consider this an expensive lesson in cybersecurity." "Send the money back right now, Vanessa," I demanded, gripping the phone so tightly my hand cramped. "If you wire it back immediately, I will not hand the video over to the police. I will let you and your deadbeat husband walk away. But if that plane takes off with my money, I swear to God I will press full federal charges. You will go to prison." Vanessa laughed, a sharp grating sound that echoed through the phone speaker. "Oh, please, Naomi, do not threaten me with the police. Mom already told everyone at the church that you are having a mental breakdown. Nobody is going to believe you. Besides, the money is already sitting safely in a joint account that Trevor and I share. It is completely secure, and there is nothing you can do about it." Before I could respond, Trevor leaned over into the frame. He reached out and snatched the phone directly out of Vanessa's hand. His face filled my screen. The condescending, polite mask he always wore around my mother was completely gone. His blue eyes were cold and filled with a disgusting amount of entitlement. He looked at me not as a sister-in-law, but as a peasant who had finally been put in her place. "Listen." Naomi, Trevor sneered, his voice low and threatening. "You need to stop calling us, and you need to stop making these ridiculous, empty threats. Just consider that 300 grand compensation for Vanessa having to endure a social media mixed cream seller like you for a sister all these years." I stared at him, absolutely repulsed by the words coming out of his mouth. A mixed cream seller. He was talking about the premium organic cosmetics line that I formulated, tested and built into a multi-million-dollar enterprise from the ground up. He was belittling my hard work, my late nights, and my sacrifices, while simultaneously stealing the profits from it. He felt completely entitled to the wealth I created simply because he believed his proximity to whiteness and his flashy suits made him inherently superior to a self-made black woman. That money does not belong to you, Trevor, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You are a fraud. You do not have a real estate empire. You are broke and you are using my sister to steal my money because you cannot afford your own lifestyle. Trevor let out a harsh, arrogant bark of laughter. Call me whatever you want, sweetheart, he mocked, shaking his head dismissively. You are just mad because your little ghetto hustle finally hit a wall. Go ahead and sue if you want, but the money is already in our joint account. By the time your cheap lawyers file the paperwork, we will have already moved the funds to offshore accounts. We are going to enjoy Aspen. Enjoy bankruptcy, Naomi. He reached toward the screen, and the video feed abruptly cut out. The FaceTime call disconnected, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the dark glass of my phone. The silence in the hallway was heavy, but the chaotic noise inside my head had suddenly stopped. The tears that had been threatening to fall just moments before completely evaporated. The deep, agonizing pain of betrayal from my own sister was completely gone. In its place, a dark, terrifying clarity settled over my mind. Trevor thought he was untouchable. Vanessa thought she had won. They truly believed that because the money had landed in Trevor's joint account, it was safe from me. I looked down at Malik, who was still waiting patiently by the front door. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes full of concern. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked softly. I slipped my phone into my pocket and walked over to him. I knelt down and zipped up his winter coat, smoothing the collar down with gentle hands. "I am more than okay, baby," I told him. My voice was no longer shaking. It was solid and sharp like shattered glass. Trevor and Vanessa thought they had stolen my future. But what they did not know was that the very account they used to hide my money was a federal trap waiting to snap shut. My ruthless calm came from a secret piece of information I had kept to myself for over a year. I had run a background check on Trevor when they first started dating. I knew about his tax evasion. I knew about the IRS bank garnishment that was sitting dormant on his Social Security number, just waiting for a deposit to trigger it. Vanessa had unknowingly deposited my money right into a black hole that would swallow it whole to pay off her husband's government debts. I just had to get the police involved to secure my own fraud claim before the IRS wiped them clean. I stood up and grabbed my purse. The despair was gone. Only ruthlessness remained. "Come on, Malik," I said, opening the front door and stepping out into the cold November night. "Let us go to the police station. We need to make sure your Aunt Vanessa cannot buy a return ticket home." The drive to the downtown Atlanta police precinct was a blur of streetlights and holiday decorations that felt entirely mocking. The city was glowing with festive cheer, but inside my car the atmosphere was thick with tension. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Malik sat quietly in the passenger seat, clutching his iPad against his chest like a shield. I parked the car in front of the precinct, taking a deep breath before leading my son through the heavy glass doors. The police station lobby was stark white, brightly lit, and smelled heavily of stale coffee and industrial floor wax. It was completely empty except for a bored-looking desk sergeant sitting behind a thick pane of bulletproof glass. I walked right up to the glass and spoke through the small metal grate. I explained everything in precise detail. I told him my sister Vanessa and her husband Trevor had stolen my phone from my kitchen counter. I told him they had wired $312,000 out of my business and personal accounts. I explained that they were currently boarding a flight to Aspen and I needed an immediate freeze order to stop the funds from clearing. I slid Malik's iPad under the slot in the glass. "Play the video," I told the officer. "You can see her doing it. You can see her face in the reflection of the television screen. It is undeniable proof." The officer leaned forward and watched the screen recording. I watched his eyes track the movement on the screen, waiting for him to widen his eyes in realization, waiting for him to pick up his radio and call a detective. Instead, he just let out a long, exhausted sigh and pushed the iPad back through the slot. "Look, lady," he said, rubbing the back of his neck and looking at me with pure condescension. This woman in the video is your sister, right? She was an invited guest in your home. She had physical access to your unlocked phone. I cannot just arrest somebody for wire fraud on a Thanksgiving weekend based on a video of her tapping a screen. For all I know, she is a registered signer on your business accounts, or you owed her a massive debt. This looks like a family civil dispute to me. You need to take her to civil court and let a judge sort it out. I stared at him, feeling my blood pressure skyrocket. A civil dispute. I repeated, my voice echoing loudly in the empty lobby. Officer, she stole over $300,000. She fled the state. This is grand larceny. The fraud department at Chase Bank specifically told me I need a police report and a freeze order right now tonight, or the money is gone. The officer shook his head, looking completely disinterested in my panic. The courts are closed until Monday anyway, ma'am, he said, tapping a stack of paperwork on his desk. I can write down an incident report so you have a piece of paper with a number on it to give your bank. But no financial crimes detective is going to look at a family money squabble until next week at the earliest. We do not just freeze bank accounts over the counter because you had a fight with your sister over turkey. Have a good night. I walked out of that precinct holding a worthless slip of paper with a case number scribbled on it. The system was completely broken. It was designed to protect white-collar criminals hiding behind family ties while punishing the victims who actually worked for their money. But as I strapped Malik into his car seat and started the engine, I did not feel defeated. The police might be too lazy and bureaucratic to help me tonight, but I knew an agency that was never lazy when it came to collecting money: the Internal Revenue Service. Trevor's secret bank garnishment was already active. I had discovered it months ago when a background check I ran for my mother accidentally pulled up his public court records. He owed the federal government hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes and unpaid judgments. His accounts were legally flagged for immediate seizure. The moment my $312,000 landed in his joint account, the federal automated system would detect the funds, freeze the account, and sweep every single penny away to pay his debts. The trap was already set. Vanessa had just willingly walked right into it. We drove back to my house in silence. The driveway was empty. The caterers had packed up their vans, and all the luxury cars belonging to my aunts and uncles were completely gone. The large house was dark except for the amber glow of the porch light. I unlocked the front door and walked Malik upstairs to his bedroom. I helped him out of his winter coat and tucked him into bed, kissing his forehead. I promised him that Mommy had everything completely under control and that he was my little hero. I had just walked back down the stairs and stepped into the living room when the loud, aggressive pounding started. The heavy brass knocker on my front door slammed against the wood so violently that the entire door frame vibrated. The sound was frantic and furious. I walked toward the foyer, my heart beating a steady rhythm against my ribs. I did not even bother looking through the peephole. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door wide open. My mother, Brenda, pushed her way inside before I could even say a single word. She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving and her face flushed with absolute rage. She had taken off her expensive church hat, but she was still wearing her tailored Sunday suit. She marched straight past me into the living room and violently slammed a thick stack of glossy paper down onto the glass coffee table. The papers fanned out, sliding across the surface and falling onto the rug. They were flyers for the upcoming church holiday charity banquet, a banquet that I had fully funded out of my own pocket. "You actually did it!" she screamed, her voice shrill and echoing off the high ceilings. "You actually went down to the police station and tried to file criminal charges against your own flesh and blood. You are a monster, Naomi. You are an absolute, vindictive monster." I closed the front door slowly, leaning back against the heavy mahogany wood. "How did you know I went to the police?" I asked, calmly crossing my arms over my chest. "Because the desk sergeant at the precinct goes to our church." My mother spat, her eyes wide with fury. "He called Pastor Williams to ask if our family was having a crisis. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? The pastor called me right in the middle of dessert, asking why my daughters are fighting over money like common street thugs." You have ruined Vanessa's flawless reputation, and you have completely destroyed mine. She did not care that I had been robbed. She did not care that my son's college fund was wiped out. She only cared about how this made her look to the other busybodies in her social circle. Her absolute vanity was sickening to witness. So I did what I had to do. My mother continued taking a step closer to me, her manicured finger jabbing the air aggressively. I called all your aunts. I called your uncles. I called the entire church board. I told them exactly what is wrong with you. I told them the stress of running your little internet business has caused you to have a complete mental breakdown. I told them you transferred that money to Trevor to invest in a real estate deal, and now you are having buyer's remorse and trying to frame your own sister to get it back. I stared at her, completely mesmerized by the sheer depth of her delusion and cruelty. You lied to the entire family just to protect a white man who is drowning in debt, I stated simply, my voice void of any emotion. You orchestrated a smear campaign against your own daughter. Trevor is a provider, my mother shrieked, refusing to hear a single word against him. He is a good Christian man who is taking care of your sister and elevating this family. You are just a bitter, jealous woman who wants to drag everyone down into the gutter with you because you cannot find a man of your own. You are no longer my daughter, Naomi. I am done with you. The whole family is done with you. Do not come to the church. Do not call your cousins. From now on, I completely disown you. I stood there in the quiet living room looking at the woman who had spent my entire life making me feel like I was never enough. For 32 years, I had craved her approval. I had bought this massive house hoping she would be proud of me. I had funded her church events, hoping she would finally look at me the way she looked at Vanessa. But standing there watching her defend a thief over her own hardworking daughter, the final thread holding my childhood trauma together just snapped. I did not feel sad. I did not feel abandoned. I felt entirely and completely free. I looked at the stack of church flyers scattered across the coffee table, and then I looked right into my mother's angry eyes. I gave her a slow, strange smile that made her abruptly stop yelling and take a step back in confusion. "Great, Mom," I said, my voice strangely calm and perfectly steady. "Go ahead and disown me. Tell the whole church I am crazy. Tell the aunts and uncles I am dead to you. Make sure you scream it from the rooftops. Because tomorrow, when Vanessa calls you crying and begging me to save her life, I want you to remember this exact day. I want you to remember the moment you chose a thief over me, because when the federal government freezes her assets tomorrow, I will not lift a single finger to stop them from throwing her in prison." The morning sun crept through the blinds, but I was already awake and fully dressed for war. I did not wear sweatpants or a hoodie. I wore my sharpest, tailored navy blue power suit, the exact one I wore when I pitched my cosmetics line to major retail buyers. I applied my makeup with surgical precision, making sure there was absolutely no trace of the emotional wreckage from the night before. Today, I was not a victim. I was a chief executive officer handling a hostile corporate takeover. I made sure Malik had a good breakfast and set him up with his favorite cartoons before grabbing my leather briefcase and his iPad. I arranged for my trusted neighbor to watch him for a few hours. I had a very specific appointment to keep. I drove to the main commercial branch of Chase Bank located in the downtown financial district. The moment the heavy glass doors slid open, I walked inside with a purposeful stride that demanded immediate attention. The morning rush of customers was already forming a line, but I did not stop at the velvet ropes. I bypassed the standard teller stations entirely and walked straight toward the frosted glass offices reserved for high-net-worth clients and branch management. An assistant tried to step in my path to ask if I had an appointment, but I did not even break my stride. I told her I was Naomi, the owner of a multi-million-dollar business account that had just been subjected to massive internal wire fraud, and I needed to see the branch director immediately, or my next stop was a press conference with local news stations. Within 60 seconds, I was sitting in a plush leather chair inside the spacious office of Mr. Sterling, the senior branch director. He was an older man with graying hair and a perfectly pressed suit. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk, looking over his glasses at me with that familiar blend of corporate politeness and underlying skepticism. He folded his hands together and started to give me the exact same speech the telephone representative had given me the night before. "Ms. Naomi, I understand you are distressed," he began in a soothing, measured tone. "But as our fraud department already explained, the transaction was initiated from your personal registered device. Without a court order or a formal police warrant, we simply cannot reverse a completed wire transfer based on a verbal claim of theft. It is a strict matter of federal banking regulations." I did not argue with him. I did not raise my voice. I simply unzipped my briefcase, pulled out Malik's iPad, and placed it flat on the mahogany desk right in front of Mr. Sterling. I tapped the screen, entered the password, and opened the video file. "I do not expect you to reverse it based on a verbal claim. Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice ice cold and perfectly steady, "I expect you to reverse it based on undeniable high-definition video evidence of grand larceny occurring on your banking platform. Press play." Mr. Sterling sighed lightly, clearly thinking I was just another emotional customer holding on to a useless piece of security footage. He reached out and pressed the play button. I sat back in my chair and watched his face as the video played. I watched his eyes track the clear reflection in the dark television screen. I watched his posture suddenly stiffen when he saw Vanessa's face clearly looking over my shoulder to steal my passcode. I watched the blood drain entirely from his face when the camera zoomed in perfectly on Vanessa physically snatching the phone from the counter, opening the banking app, and manually typing in the wire transfer for $312,000. The video ended. The office was completely silent, except for the low hum of the air conditioning vent. Mr. Sterling did not say another word about federal banking regulations. The corporate skepticism was completely wiped from his expression, replaced by the sheer terror of massive institutional liability. He realized he was not looking at a family dispute. He was looking at a documented felony, and his bank was the vehicle used to commit it. He picked up his desk phone with a slightly trembling hand and hit a speed dial button. "Get me the executive fraud response team on the line right now," he barked into the receiver, his voice completely devoid of the soothing tone he had used earlier. "We have a confirmed, unauthorized access and fraudulent wire transfer. I have physical video evidence of the perpetrator executing the theft. We need to initiate an immediate emergency clawback protocol." He slammed the phone down and started typing furiously on his computer keyboard. His eyes darted rapidly across the dual monitors on his desk. "Ms. Naomi," he said, his voice tight with concentration, "because you have provided absolute proof that you did not authorize this transaction and that your device was physically stolen to bypass our security measures, we are officially opening an internal corporate investigation. The bank will fully protect your assets under our fraud guarantee. However, the actual retrieval of the funds is going to be complicated." He hit the enter key hard and leaned closer to his screen. "Wire transfers move through an automated clearinghouse system," he explained without looking away from the monitor. "If we catch it while it is pending, we can easily stop it. But because this was initiated yesterday evening on a holiday, the system placed it in a holding queue. It processed the moment the Federal Reserve systems came online this morning. The $312,000 fully cleared and deposited into your brother-in-law's joint account exactly 4 hours ago." I kept my face completely neutral even though my heart was pounding against my ribs. I knew the money was already in Trevor's account. That was the entire point. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the edge of his desk. "So what does that mean, Mr. Sterling?" I asked. "Can you pull the money back out of his account or not?" Mr. Sterling was typing rapidly, pulling up the routing information for the destination bank. "We can issue a federal fraud freeze request to the receiving institution," he explained. "Normally, when a bank receives an emergency fraud flag, they will immediately lock the destination account to prevent the suspects from withdrawing or spending the stolen funds. Once the account is locked, our legal team works with their legal team to reverse the wire and return the funds to you. Let me just pull up the status of the receiving account to initiate the freeze." I sat perfectly still, watching the reflection of the computer screen in his glasses. I knew exactly what he was going to find. I had been waiting for this exact moment since the second Vanessa and Trevor walked out of my house. I watched as Mr. Sterling accessed the interbank communication portal to ping Trevor's account status. Suddenly, the rapid clicking of his keyboard completely stopped. Mr. Sterling went completely rigid in his leather chair. He leaned back slowly, taking his hands off the keyboard as if it had just shocked him. His brow furrowed into a deep, confused frown as he stared at the glowing monitor. "What is it?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly calm. "Did they already withdraw the cash?" Mr. Sterling slowly shook his head, his eyes still glued to the screen in front of him. "No, they did not withdraw it," he said, his voice dropping to a bewildered whisper. "Ms. Naomi, your brother-in-law's beneficiary account has a federal-level red flag warning on it. I have never seen anything happen this fast before." He looked up at me completely stunned. "We cannot initiate a fraud freeze on the destination account because the federal government has already seized it. The moment your funds cleared 4 hours ago, an automated Internal Revenue Service bank garnishment was triggered. The entire $312,000 was immediately frozen and swept from the account to satisfy a massive federal tax debt. The account balance is currently in the negative. The money is completely gone." 2,000 miles away from the quiet mahogany office in Atlanta, the freezing crisp air of Aspen, Colorado, was filled with the sounds of absolute luxury. The majestic snow-capped mountains served as a stunning backdrop to the streets lined with high-end boutiques and five-star ski resorts. Vanessa stepped out of the back of a black, luxury chauffeured SUV, and her designer boots crunched softly against the freshly cleared pavement. She adjusted the collar of her white cashmere coat and took a deep breath of the thin mountain air, feeling completely invincible. In her mind, she had pulled off the ultimate heist. She genuinely believed she had left her younger sister Naomi, completely ruined and helpless back in Georgia, while she was officially stepping into the upper echelon of society, where she always felt she truly belonged. Trevor had walked down the street to secure a private table at an exclusive Mountain View restaurant, leaving Vanessa to do some holiday shopping. She walked down the pristine sidewalk, her chin held high, looking at the other wealthy tourists with a sense of extreme superiority. She stopped in front of the heavy glass doors of the official Rolex boutique. The window displays were lined with velvet cushions, holding timepieces that cost more than most people made in a decade. Vanessa smiled a greedy, self-satisfied smile. She pushed the heavy glass doors open and stepped into the warm, brightly lit showroom. The atmosphere inside the boutique was hushed and reverent, smelling of expensive leather and polished wood. A tall, elegant sales associate named Julian immediately approached her, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and a polite, welcoming smile. "Welcome to the boutique, madam," Julian said, giving her a slight bow. "How can I assist you today? Are we looking for a specific piece to add to your collection?" Vanessa slipped off her leather gloves and placed her expensive handbag on the glass display counter, making sure the luxury logo was perfectly visible. "I am looking for a gift for my husband," she announced, her voice deliberately loud enough for the two other wealthy couples in the store to hear. "He is a senior luxury real estate broker, and he just closed a massive multi-million-dollar commercial deal before the holiday. I want to surprise him with something substantial to celebrate, something that truly reflects his level of success." Julian nodded smoothly, entirely accustomed to the arrogant posturing of newly wealthy clients. "Of course, madam, we have several exceptional pieces that would perfectly suit a man of his caliber. Please step this way." He led her to a premium glass case in the center of the showroom. Julian unlocked the case with a small key and carefully extracted a heavy, stunning timepiece. He placed it on a black velvet presentation tray and slid it across the glass toward Vanessa. "This is the Platinum Cosmograph Daytona," he explained, his voice smooth and practiced. "It features an ice blue dial and a custom diamond baguette bezel. It is an extremely rare piece and highly sought after by our elite collectors. It is an absolute statement of power and prestige." Vanessa picked up the watch, feeling the heavy, cold weight of the platinum in her hand. It was flashy, arrogant, and incredibly expensive. It was exactly the kind of watch Trevor needed to wear to his country club meetings to maintain his fake image of wealth. "How much is it?" she asked casually, not even bothering to look at the price tag. $50,000 including the holiday luxury tax. Julian replied, maintaining his polite professional smile. "We will take it," Vanessa said without missing a single beat. She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out her wallet. She felt a massive rush of adrenaline. $50,000 was an insane amount of money to drop on a watch, but it did not matter to her. It was not her money. She was spending the money Naomi had bled and sweat for, and the sheer cruelty of that fact made the purchase feel even more satisfying. She pulled out the heavy metal debit card linked directly to her and Trevor's joint checking account. It was the exact same account she had illegally wired Naomi's $312,000 into just the night before. She handed the card to Julian with a smug, victorious smile. Julian took the card, handling it by the edges. "Excellent choice, madam," he said. "If you will just follow me to the register, I will process this and have the timepiece boxed and wrapped in our signature green packaging for you." Vanessa followed him to the sleek marble counter at the back of the boutique. She leaned casually against the marble, crossing her legs and looking around the store with an air of absolute ownership. She watched Julian tap the total amount into the high-end point of sale terminal. $50,000. He inserted the heavy metal chip card into the bottom of the machine and waited. The machine beeped quietly, and the screen displayed the word processing. Vanessa pulled out her phone and checked her reflection in the dark screen, fixing a stray strand of blonde hair. She was already imagining the look on Trevor's face when she handed him the green box at lunch. Suddenly, the point-of-sale machine let out a sharp, aggressive double beep. Julian looked down at the screen, and his polite smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He quickly composed himself and looked back up at Vanessa. "I apologize, madam, but it appears the transaction has been declined," he said, keeping his voice extremely low to ensure the other customers in the store did not hear. Vanessa scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, that is just my bank being overly cautious," she said, rolling her eyes. "We transferred over $300,000 into that account last night for our vacation expenses. They always flag large out-of-state purchases for fraud protection. Just run it again. It will go through." Julian nodded politely and pressed the buttons to clear the error. "I completely understand, madam. Fraud algorithms can be quite sensitive during the holiday season. Let me process it one more time." He inserted the card into the chip reader again. The screen lit up. "Processing." Vanessa tapped her manicured nails impatiently against the marble counter. She shot a quick glance over her shoulder, noticing that an older woman draped in diamonds was casually looking in their direction. Vanessa lifted her chin, refusing to look embarrassed. The machine let out the same sharp, aggressive double beep. Julian pulled the card out of the machine and placed it gently on the counter. "I am so sorry, madam, but it has been declined a second time," he said, his voice taking on a slightly more rigid, professional tone. "The system is showing an error code that indicates insufficient funds rather than a security lock. Do you perhaps have another card you would prefer to use for this purchase?" "Insufficient funds." Vanessa repeated, her voice rising an octave higher than she intended. The older woman across the store definitely heard her this time and turned her head to stare. Vanessa felt a hot flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. "That is completely impossible, Julian. I know exactly how much money is in that account. We are multi-millionaires. Your machine is obviously malfunctioning." "I assure you, madam, our systems are functioning perfectly," Julian replied, his tone now entirely cold and detached. He had dealt with people trying to pass bad cards before, and his demeanor shifted from eager salesman to strict security. "If you would like to call your banking institution to verify the balance, we can hold the watch for you for 15 minutes. "I am not calling anyone." Vanessa snapped, her upper-class illusion completely shattering as genuine panic began to set in. "Run it again. I said run the card again right now." Julian let out a very quiet sigh. He picked up the metal card and inserted it into the reader for the third time. The tension in the air was thick and suffocating. Vanessa leaned over the marble counter, staring unblinking at the small digital screen on the point-of-sale machine. She watched the little loading circle spin. She prayed to whatever higher power she believed in that the word approved would flash across the screen. She needed to buy this watch. She needed to prove to the people in this store that she was better than them. The circle stopped spinning. The machine shrieked with a loud, undeniable rejection tone. The red letters illuminated the screen, glaring back at her like a mocking neon sign. Declined. Do not honor. Julian pulled the card out of the machine and slid it across the marble counter toward her. He did not say a word. He just gave her a flat, patronizing look that completely stripped away every single ounce of dignity she had left. Vanessa stared at the card sitting on the counter. Her hands started to tremble uncontrollably. $312,000 could not just vanish into thin air. Unless the bank had figured out what she did. Unless Naomi had somehow managed to freeze the account. The terrifying reality of her situation came crashing down on her all at once. She was standing in the middle of a luxury boutique in Aspen, thousands of miles from home, with absolutely no money to her name. The air in the bank director's office was completely still. I sat perfectly motionless in the plush leather chair, my mind racing to process the absolute magnitude of what Mr. Sterling had just told me. An Internal Revenue Service bank garnishment. The words hung in the air between us like a heavy velvet curtain dropping on the final act of a play. I looked at the gray-haired bank director. His eyes were wide behind his wire-rimmed glasses, and he seemed just as shocked by the computer screen as I was. "Can you explain exactly what that means, Mr. Sterling?" I asked, my voice steady and quiet. "I need to understand the exact mechanics of what just happened to my money." He took a deep breath, taking his hands off the keyboard and folding them neatly on his mahogany desk. "Ms. Naomi," he began, his tone shifting from professional courtesy to genuine disbelief. "Your brother-in-law Trevor is not the senior luxury real estate broker your family believes him to be. According to the federal flags on his profile, he has been carrying a massive amount of debt for several years. We are talking about severe IRS tax evasion penalties and multiple court-ordered civil judgments from unpaid creditors. The total amount of his documented legal debt is well over $500,000. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hands on my lap. $500,000, I repeated. My mother had bragged to our entire church congregation that Trevor was a millionaire who practically owned the Atlanta real estate market. She had used his fabricated success as a weapon to belittle my legitimate cosmetics business at every single family gathering. She worshipped his tailored suits and his leased sports cars while turning a blind eye to my grueling 18-hour workdays. And the entire time the man was secretly drowning in federal debt. Mr. Sterling nodded, adjusting his glasses. When a citizen owes that level of debt to the federal government, the IRS does not just send polite collection letters, he explained. They secure court orders for automatic bank garnishments. They place a silent, dormant lock on the debtor's social security number and any bank accounts attached to it. For the past 8 months, your brother-in-law's joint checking account has been under an active federal seizure order. But the system is completely automated. It can only seize what is actually sitting in the account at the time of the sweep. So because Trevor never kept any real money in there, the IRS could not collect, I said, putting the puzzle pieces together. He was hiding his assets. Exactly, Mr. Sterling confirmed. Debtors with active garnishments often keep their account balances at zero. They cash their checks at predatory check cashing spots, or they put all their assets strictly in their spouse's name to avoid detection. Trevor has been using this joint account as a dummy account to fly under the federal radar. The IRS monitoring system just sits there, completely invisible, waiting patiently for a large enough deposit to trigger the sweep algorithm. The moment a substantial amount of cash hits the ledger, the system immediately locks the funds and transfers them directly to the United States Treasury. I felt a slow creeping sensation of pure vindictive satisfaction spread through my chest. The poetic justice of the situation was almost too perfect to be real. Vanessa had looked down on me my entire life. She had called my hard work a ghetto hustle. She had stood in my kitchen, stolen my phone, and wired my life savings into her husband's account, thinking she had executed the perfect crime. She thought she was stealing my money to buy designer clothes and drink expensive champagne in Aspen. But in reality, she had just acted as an unpaid courier, delivering my money directly to the federal government to pay off her deadbeat husband's hidden tax liens. I thought about the sheer arrogance Trevor had displayed in my hallway the night before. He had shoved past me wearing a suit he probably bought on credit, mocking my business while secretly dodging federal tax collectors. And Vanessa, my own sister, was so desperate to be perceived as wealthy that she never bothered to question why her successful real estate broker husband never had any actual cash. She was so blinded by her own elitism that she willingly committed a federal felony just to keep his charade alive. They were the perfect toxic match. Two massive frauds who had finally collided with reality. What happens to my fraud claim? Then I asked, looking Mr. Sterling directly in the eyes. I need my business operating funds restored. I have vendors to pay and a warehouse lease to sign on Monday morning. Does the IRS keep my money? Mr. Sterling sat up straighter, his posture returning to that of a senior banking executive. Yes, the IRS will keep those specific funds, he stated firmly. Because the money entered Trevor's account through what appeared to the automated system as a legitimate wire transfer, the federal government legally claimed it to satisfy his outstanding debt. Untangling a federal seizure is a bureaucratic nightmare that can take years of litigation. However, that is no longer your problem, Ms. Naomi. He gestured toward Malik's iPad still sitting on the desk between us. You have provided undeniable physical proof that a felony wire fraud was committed on our platform. You proved that your device was stolen and your security was breached. Under our premium business fraud protection, guarantee the bank is legally obligated to make you whole. I am initiating an emergency provisional credit for the entire $312,000 right now. The funds will be fully available in your business account by tomorrow morning, so you can sign your warehouse lease and pay your vendors without any interruption to your operations. I let out a long, slow breath, feeling the massive crushing weight finally lift off my shoulders. My company was safe. Malik's college fund was safe. Everything I had built with my own two hands was completely secure. The terrifying nightmare that began at my Thanksgiving dinner table was finally over. But what about Vanessa? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The bank is taking a $300,000 loss today. Who pays for that? Mr. Sterling smiled, a very thin, very sharp corporate smile. The bank does not take losses, Ms. Naomi, he said smoothly. Our corporate legal department will now take over. We will file formal federal charges against your sister for wire fraud and bank fraud. Because she executed the transfer using our digital infrastructure, the bank will pursue her personally for the full restitution of the stolen funds, plus severe legal damages. Since the IRS has already wiped out their liquid assets, your sister and her husband will be facing complete financial ruin. They will likely lose their home, their vehicles, and any remaining assets they possess to satisfy our corporate lawsuits. And that is before the district attorney even decides on the criminal prison sentence for the felony theft. I sat there absorbing his words, allowing the reality of their impending doom to wash over me. My mother had promised to disown me and destroy my reputation in the church community to protect Vanessa. She had looked me in the eye and chosen a thief over her own daughter because she worshipped the illusion of Trevor's success. She had aggressively defended a man who was nothing more than a glorified con artist. Now that illusion was completely shattered. Trevor was exposed as a broke tax evader, and Vanessa was about to be hunted down by a multi-billion-dollar banking corporation for grand larceny. They had tried to bury me, but they had actually just dug their own graves and jumped right in. I stood up from the leather chair, picking up Malik's iPad and sliding it carefully back into my briefcase. I felt taller, stronger, and entirely untouchable. The pain of my family's betrayal, the years of being the scapegoat, the endless criticism, and the cruel jokes, it all simply washed away. They had finally pushed me too far, and in doing so, they had triggered their own absolute destruction. I did not have to lift a single finger to ruin them. Their own greed had done all the heavy lifting for me. Mr. Sterling stood up and extended his hand across the desk. "I will personally oversee the provisional credit to your account, Mrs. Naomi," he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "And I will forward the video evidence to our federal fraud investigators immediately. You should expect a call from law enforcement very soon. They will need your official statement to issue the arrest warrants." I shook his hand firmly, my grip strong and confident. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," I said. "I will be ready for their call." I turned and walked toward the frosted glass door of his office. I placed my hand on the cool metal handle, feeling a profound sense of closure. Before I pushed the door open, I stopped and looked back over my shoulder at the banking executive. The corners of my mouth curled upward into a slow, chilling smile. "So that means the moment my $312,000 transferred in, the federal government immediately seized it," I said, finishing my own thought. Mr. Sterling nodded slowly, confirming the absolute reality of my sister's downfall. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Aspen, the pristine illusion of Vanessa and Trevor's wealthy lifestyle was violently shattering. The world around them was beginning to tilt off its axis, feeling chaotic and entirely unstable. Vanessa walked back into the grand lobby of their five-star ski resort, feeling a cold knot of dread sitting heavy in her stomach. The lobby was a masterpiece of rustic mountain luxury, featuring vaulted timber ceilings, a massive stone fireplace roaring with warmth and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered peaks. Normally, Vanessa would revel in this environment, making sure everyone saw her designer coat and her expensive boots. But right now, the atmosphere felt suffocating. Trevor was marching slightly ahead of her, his face red with anger. He was furious about the humiliation at the Rolex boutique, and he was determined to take his frustration out on the hotel staff. He walked straight up to the mahogany front desk, entirely ignoring the line of other guests waiting to check in. He slammed his hand flat against the polished wood, demanding immediate attention from the concierge. He loudly complained that his premium bank card had been falsely declined, and he demanded that the hotel manually push through the daily incidental hold for their luxury suite. A man in a sharp, tailored charcoal suit stepped out from the back office. It was the general manager of the resort. He did not offer Trevor a warm holiday greeting. He did not smile or apologize for the inconvenience. He walked up to the counter and looked at Trevor with a cold, professional detachment. "Sir," the manager said, his voice low and firm, "I was just about to send security to locate you. The credit card you provided for your stay has not only declined the routine daily hold, but your financial institution has issued a hard block instruction to our merchant system." Trevor stood up taller, puffing out his chest and using his height to try and intimidate the manager. "This is completely unacceptable," he yelled, his voice echoing across the quiet, sophisticated lobby. "I am a senior real estate broker from Atlanta. We transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars into that account last night. Your machine is broken. You are ruining our vacation, and I will personally see to it that you are fired by the end of the day. Do you know who I am?" The manager did not flinch at the threat. He simply raised his hand and signaled across the room. Two large hotel security guards dressed in dark suits quietly stepped forward, taking their positions right behind Trevor. The wealthy patrons sitting near the fireplace stopped their conversations and turned to watch the commotion. "I do not care who you are, sir," the manager replied, his tone dropping to an icy whisper. "We have already packed your belongings. Your luggage has been brought down and is sitting by the front doors. Since you cannot provide a valid form of payment for your stay, you are no longer considered guests of this resort. You are trespassing. I need you to vacate the premises immediately, or I will have the local authorities physically remove you from the property." Vanessa felt the entire room spinning around her. The judging eyes of the other wealthy guests were burning into her skin, completely stripping away her upper-class facade. This was her absolute worst nightmare unfolding in real time. She was being publicly humiliated and kicked out of a hotel like a common criminal. She pulled her phone out of her designer purse, her fingers shaking so violently she almost dropped it on the marble floor. She completely ignored Trevor, who was now aggressively screaming at the security guards, threatening to sue the hotel for millions of dollars. She needed to see the money. She needed to log into the banking app and prove to these people that she was rich. She needed to know that this was just a massive misunderstanding and that her $312,000 was sitting safely in the account. She typed in her passcode with trembling thumbs and tapped the blue banking icon. The app loaded agonizingly slow. The little blue circle spun in the center of the screen, mocking her panic. Finally, the dashboard loaded. The screen flashed white, and then a massive blazing red banner appeared across the top of the display. It did not say pending. It did not say fraud hold. It did not ask her to verify her identity. It read in bold, terrifying letters, "Account frozen by the Federal Tax Authority." Vanessa stopped breathing. Her eyes darted down to the available balance section of the screen. The number staring back at her was not $312,000. It was a negative sign followed by the number 35. Available balance: negative $35. The money had completely vanished. It was swept entirely away to pay off government debt she did not even know existed. Her mind completely short-circuited, trying to process the catastrophic reality of what she was looking at. She had stood in her sister's kitchen. She had stolen the passcode. She had committed felony wire fraud and risked spending years in a federal prison to steal that money. And the moment she deposited it, she had unknowingly handed it straight to the Internal Revenue Service. "Trevor," she whispered, reaching out and pulling weakly at his coat sleeve. "Trevor, look at this." He yanked his arm away, still cursing at the manager and demanding to speak to the corporate owners of the resort. "Look at my phone, Trevor," she screamed, her voice cracking with pure, unadulterated hysteria. The sudden shrillness of her voice finally made him stop yelling. He turned around looking annoyed. She shoved the glowing phone screen right into his face. "The government took the money, Trevor. The IRS took all of it. Why is the IRS taking our money?" Trevor froze completely. He stared down at the red banner on her phone screen. All the arrogant bravado instantly drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and utterly terrified. He knew exactly what that red banner meant. He knew his years of hiding from federal tax collectors, dodging court summons, and using his wife's accounts to hide his non-existent assets had just violently caught up with him. He realized that the massive deposit Vanessa had stolen from Naomi had triggered the dormant bank garnishment. The feds had his money, and because the account was linked to his social security number, they definitely knew exactly where he was. What tax debt? Trevor Vanessa begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "What is this? Where did our money go? I stole that money for you. I ruined my relationship with my sister for you. Tell me this is a mistake." Trevor did not apologize. He did not reach out to comfort his wife. He did not assure her that everything was going to be okay. He looked at the two security guards who were now advancing toward them with their hands resting near their radios. Then he looked at the heavy glass doors leading out to the street. The mask of the loving, wealthy provider completely slipped off, revealing the cowardly, opportunistic fraud he truly was. "You are on your own, Vanessa," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom and self-preservation. He turned around and lunged toward the pile of luggage sitting near the exit. He reached down and grabbed the handle of his own expensive leather suitcase, completely ignoring Vanessa's bags sitting right next to it. He did not look back at her. He pushed his way through the heavy glass doors and sprinted out into the freezing mountain air. "Trevor!" Vanessa screamed, her voice echoing off the high timber ceilings, sounding like a wounded animal. She dropped her phone on the marble floor and chased after him, her high-heeled boots slipping frantically on the polished stone. She burst through the hotel doors, out into the biting wind and the blinding white snow. A yellow taxi was idling at the curb. Trevor ran straight to it, cutting off another hotel guest. He threw his leather bag into the back seat and dove in after it, slamming the door shut. He yelled at the driver to step on the gas and get him to the airport immediately. Vanessa ran across the icy sidewalk, waving her arms frantically. "Wait!" she screamed, sobbing uncontrollably. "Trevor, do not leave me here." The taxi tires spun out on the icy road, kicking up a spray of gray slush before gripping the pavement and speeding away down the mountain road. Vanessa watched the red taillights disappear into the heavy falling snow. She took 2 steps forward, trying to follow the car, but her knees completely gave out beneath her. She collapsed onto the cold, wet ground. The freezing snow immediately seeped through the fabric of her expensive white cashmere coat, chilling her to the bone. She knelt there in the freezing slush outside the 5-star resort, entirely alone. The reality of her situation crushed down on her chest, making it impossible to breathe. She was thousands of miles from home, completely abandoned by the man she had worshipped. She had absolutely no money to her name, no credit cards that worked, and nowhere to go. And the most terrifying realization of all was that Naomi was back in Atlanta with the video evidence. Vanessa knew her sister was not going to show her any mercy. She had traded her family, her freedom, and her entire future for a man who left her lying in the snow the second the money ran out. I pulled into my driveway, feeling a deep sense of peace that I had not felt in years. The afternoon sun was casting long golden shadows across my front lawn. I walked through the front door, and the house was perfectly quiet and comfortably warm. Malik was sitting at the kitchen island, happily eating a snack and drawing his favorite superheroes in his sketchbook. I kissed the top of his head and told him everything was going to be completely fine. The provisional credit from Chase Bank was already showing as pending on my business dashboard. My cosmetics company was safe. My son's future was safe. I walked over to the stove to boil some water. I needed a quiet moment to decompress after the intense meeting with Mr. Sterling at the bank. I pulled my favorite ceramic mug from the cabinet and dropped a chamomile tea bag inside. The soft whistling of the kettle was the only sound echoing in the large house. I poured the steaming water into the mug and watched the liquid turn a deep golden color. Just as I leaned back against the cool granite counter to relax, my phone vibrated violently against the marble surface. The screen lit up, illuminating the dark corner of the kitchen. The caller ID displayed Vanessa's name. I stared at the screen for a moment. Just last night, seeing her name pop up on a FaceTime call had sent a sickening jolt of panic and anxiety straight through my chest. Now it brought absolutely nothing but a cold, calculated anticipation. I knew exactly what was happening on the other end of that line. The federal trap had finally snapped shut, and the crushing reality of her own actions was tearing her fake world apart. I reached out, tapped the green accept button, and pressed the speaker icon. I set the phone down on the counter and waited in silence. For the first few seconds, there were no actual words spoken. There was only the loud, chaotic sound of freezing wind howling through the microphone, accompanied by the heavy, ragged sound of someone hyperventilating in sheer panic. Naomi Vanessa screamed. Her voice was entirely unrecognizable. It was raw, shrill, and completely stripped of the fake high society accent she had spent the last decade perfecting. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated terror. "I am here, Vanessa," I replied, my voice completely level and calm. "What did you do?" she shrieked, her voice cracking wildly. "What did you do to my account? Did you hack my phone? Did you call a lawyer and put a freeze on the money? Tell me what you did right now." I took a slow breath, keeping my eyes fixed on the steam rising from my teacup. "I did not do anything, Vanessa," I said simply. "I did exactly what you told me to do last night. I accepted the loss as an expensive lesson in cybersecurity. I sat back and I let you fly away to your luxury vacation." "Do not lie to me," she sobbed, coughing uncontrollably. I could hear her teeth chattering loudly through the speaker. "The hotel kicked us out, Naomi. The manager marched us out into the lobby in front of everyone and told us the card was declined. I checked the banking app and the money is completely gone. The bank says the IRS seized it all. Every single penny is gone. Give it back to me right now. You have to call them and tell them it was a mistake. I crossed my arms over my chest, feeling absolutely no pity for the sobbing woman on the line. I cannot do that, Vanessa, because it was not a mistake. You stood in my kitchen, you stole my passcode, and you deliberately wired my money into a joint account attached to Trevor's social security number. What you did not know, because you were too busy worshiping his flashy suits to ever ask to see his actual tax returns, is that your husband owes the federal government over $500,000. There was a long, agonizing pause on the line. The howling aspen wind seemed to completely swallow her silence. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa asked, her voice dropping to a trembling, confused whisper. "What federal debt? Trevor is a senior broker. We are multimillionaires." "Trevor is a broke fraud." I corrected her, my tone sharp and unforgiving. "He is a con artist who used you to get close to our family's good name. He has had an active IRS bank garnishment sitting on his profile for 8 months. He kept his accounts at zero so the government could not take anything from him. But then you came along. You stole $312,000 of my hard-earned money and dropped it right into his lap. The automated federal system triggered instantly. The feds took it all, Vanessa. They wiped the account completely clean to pay off his debts." A loud, agonizing wail erupted from the phone. It was the sound of a woman whose entire false reality had just violently collapsed. "No, no, no, that cannot be true," she cried frantically. "You set me up, Naomi. You knew about this debt, and you tricked me into taking the money." I let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "I tricked you? I did not force you to look over my shoulder and memorize my passcode. I did not force you to snatch my phone when my back was turned. You did that all on your own because you are greedy and entitled. You dug your own grave, Vanessa. I just handed you the shovel." "Trevor left me, Naomi," she sobbed, ignoring my words, completely consumed by her own physical misery. "He ran out of the hotel lobby and got into a taxi. He took his luxury luggage and he left me here in the snow. I chased after him, but he would not even look at me. I am freezing, Naomi. I do not have a winter coat warm enough for this mountain weather. I am standing on the icy sidewalk, and my feet are totally numb. I have absolutely no money. My credit cards are all locked. The hotel security guards will not even let me sit inside by the fire." I listened to her beg. This was the exact same woman who had looked me in the eye less than 24 hours ago and told me to enjoy bankruptcy. This was the exact same woman who had laughed in my face while holding a glass of first-class champagne, mocking my cosmetics business, and telling me I was just a bitter, jealous loser. She had shown absolutely no mercy when she thought she held all the cards. "You have to buy me a plane ticket home, Naomi," she pleaded, her voice completely breaking into pathetic whimpers. "Please. You have to buy me a flight right now. Call your bank and buy me a ticket. Call Mom and tell her to wire me some money for a hotel room. I am your sister. You cannot just leave me stranded out here in the cold. I will freeze to death." "Call Mom yourself," I suggested coldly, although I highly doubt she will be much help. She spent all morning calling the church congregation, telling them I was clinically insane. She told me she was disowning me because Trevor was such a perfect provider. Let us see how much she loves her golden child when she finds out her perfect son-in-law is a broke tax evader who abandoned her daughter in the snow the second the money ran out. "Naomi, please," Vanessa begged her cries, turning into a desperate, high-pitched whine. "Just call the bank. Tell them it was fraud. Tell them I stole it so the IRS has to give it back to you. Then you can buy me a ticket. Please, just fix this." "I already told the bank it was fraud." "Vanessa," I explained, my voice dropping to a deadly serious register. I showed the branch director the video Malik took. The bank is refunding my money today through their corporate fraud protection. But the IRS is keeping your deposit, which means the bank is now going to press federal wire fraud charges against you personally to recoup their massive corporate losses. You are not just broke, Vanessa. You are going to prison. The silence on her end was absolute. She stopped crying. The sheer gravity of her impending federal indictment had finally crushed the last remaining ounce of her arrogance. She was completely trapped with nowhere to run. I reached out and picked up my ceramic mug from the granite counter. I brought it to my lips and took a slow, deliberate sip of my hot chamomile tea. The warmth spread through my chest, perfectly matching the deep, profound sense of justice that was finally settling over my soul. "I didn't do anything, sister," I said, my voice as cold as the ice she was currently sitting on. "I just watched you personally carry $312,000 to cover your useless white husband's debt. So, was first class comfortable?" I listened to the absolute silence on the other end of the line. The only sound was the faint, high-pitched whistling of the aspen wind cutting through the receiver. Vanessa was not screaming anymore. The horrifying reality of her situation had finally crushed her throat, completely suffocating her ability to speak. I took another slow sip of my chamomile tea, letting the warmth spread through my chest. I had spent my entire life walking on eggshells around this woman, trying to earn a sliver of the respect my mother so freely gave to her. I had watched her flaunt her fake wealth and belittle my hard work for years. And now, with just one phone call, I had completely dismantled her entire existence. "Naomi." She finally whispered, her voice so small and broken, it sounded like a frightened child. Her teeth were audibly chattering from the freezing cold. "Please. You cannot do this to me. You are my sister. We share the same blood." I laughed, a short, humorless sound that echoed off the high ceiling of my kitchen. "Do not try to use the word family to manipulate me now, Vanessa. Family does not wait until your back is turned to steal your life savings. Family does not laugh in your face and tell you to enjoy bankruptcy while sitting in a first-class seat funded by your money. You did not care about our blood when you were swiping my card at a Rolex boutique half an hour ago." "I am sorry," she sobbed, the desperation returning to her voice. "I am so sorry, Naomi. I made a terrible mistake. I was just trying to help Trevor. He told me he needed the money for a massive investment and that he would pay you back double. I swear, I did not know about the federal debt. I did not know they were going to take it all. You have to believe me." I set my ceramic mug down on the granite counter and leaned closer to the phone. "I do believe that you did not know about the debt, Vanessa," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "You are far too arrogant and far too stupid to intentionally give $300,000 to the federal government. I believe you thought you were stealing my money to fund your luxury lifestyle. And that makes it so much worse. Please, Naomi," she begged, her voice cracking into a high-pitched whine. "You have to call the IRS. You have to tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you transferred the money to the wrong account and that it was an accident. If you tell them it was a mistake, they have to release the funds back to you. They cannot keep money that was sent by accident. Just call them and lie for me. Please. If you do this, I promise I will never ask you for anything ever again. I will disappear from your life." I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, completely amazed by the sheer audacity of her request. She was standing in the freezing snow, completely abandoned by her husband, facing absolute financial ruin, and she still thought she could manipulate me into committing perjury to save her. She wanted me to lie to the federal government to protect the exact same woman who had just robbed me blind. A mistaken transfer. I repeated, my voice laced with heavy sarcasm. "No, dear sister, I am not going to call the Internal Revenue Service and lie to them. Because it was not a mistaken transfer. What you committed is a federal felony known as wire fraud. No, Naomi, please," she screamed, the hysteria fully returning to her voice. "You cannot say that. You cannot tell them I stole it." "I already did, Vanessa," I stated firmly, cutting off her frantic cries. "I went to the police precinct last night, And when they told me they could not do anything without evidence, I went straight to the bank director this morning. I showed him the high-definition screen recording Malik captured on his iPad. The bank has physical video proof of you committing grand larceny on their platform. They have already opened a massive corporate fraud investigation. They are refunding my money and they are coming after you for every single penny the IRS seized. The sound of her hyperventilating echoed loudly through the kitchen. No, 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 she chanted over and over again, her voice completely devoid of reason. They cannot do that. I do not have any money. They cannot take money I do not have. They can and they will, Vanessa. I assured her, feeling a dark, chilling satisfaction in delivering the final blow. They will sue you into oblivion. They will garnish whatever future wages you ever manage to earn. And that is just the civil side of things. The bank director has already forwarded Malik's video to the federal authorities. Wire fraud is a federal offense, Vanessa. It carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in a federal penitentiary. A loud, agonizing wail erupted from the phone, piercing my ears. Naomi, you cannot do this to me, she cried, her voice raw and desperate. I will not survive in prison. I am not a criminal. I am a good person. You have to tell them to drop the charges. I am your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you typed my passcode into your phone. I told her, my voice as cold and unforgiving as the aspen snow she was currently kneeling in. You made your choice, Vanessa. You chose a broke fraud of a husband over your own family. And now, you get to pay the price for that choice. I heard a sudden loud sound crackle through the phone speaker. It was a sharp wailing noise rising and falling in a frantic rhythm. It sounded far away at first, but it was rapidly getting closer, growing louder and more insistent by the second. What is that noise? I asked, narrowing my eyes at the phone screen. Vanessa stopped sobbing for a second, listening to the background noise. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice filled with absolute terror. Oh my God, Naomi. The sound grew deafeningly loud, completely drowning out the whistling wind. It was the unmistakable sound of police sirens. Multiple sirens approaching rapidly from down the mountain road. Trevor must have left you with the hotel bill, I noted casually, picking up my tea mug again. Or maybe the Rolex boutique called the authorities when you tried to pass a fraudulent card. Either way, it sounds like your luxury vacation is officially over, Vanessa. Naomi, please! She screamed, the sirens now so loud it sounded like they were right next to her. Please help me. Call a lawyer. Tell them I did not mean to do it. Tell them I am sorry. I brought the mug to my lips and took one final slow sip of the chamomile tea. I am sorry, Vanessa. I said, my voice perfectly calm and completely detached from her panic. But I have a business to run and a son to raise. I do not have time to clean up your federal crimes. Have a nice trip back to Atlanta. I reached out and pressed the red button, disconnecting the call. The chaotic screaming and the blaring sirens instantly vanished, leaving my kitchen completely silent once again. I stood there for a moment, looking at the dark screen of my phone. The psychological blow had been delivered perfectly. Vanessa was utterly destroyed, stripped of her fake wealth, abandoned by her husband, and about to be arrested by the local authorities. I turned around and walked over to the kitchen island where Malik was happily coloring. I sat down on the bar stool next to him and watched him carefully shade the cape of his superhero. "What you drawing, baby?" I asked, my voice light and cheerful, completely free of the dark tension from the phone call. Malik looked up and smiled proudly, showing off his artwork. "It is a new hero, Mom," he explained, pointing to the colorful figure on the paper. "He stops bad guys who try to take things that do not belong to them." I smiled, feeling a rush of overwhelming love for my son. He had no idea that he was the real hero of this story. He had no idea that his simple action of leaving his iPad recording had saved our entire lives and completely dismantled a decades-long toxic dynamic. "That is a very good hero, Malik," I told him gently, running my hand over his hair. "The world definitely needs more heroes like that." I looked out the large kitchen window at the golden afternoon sun. The nightmare was officially over. The heavy, suffocating weight of my family's expectations and betrayals had completely vanished. I had finally severed the toxic ties that had bound me for so long. and I was stepping into a future that was entirely my own. I had built my empire from the ground up, and absolutely no one, not my mother, not Trevor, and certainly not Vanessa, was ever going to tear it down again. The rest of my Saturday afternoon passed in absolute tranquility. Malik and I ordered a large pepperoni pizza and watched a movie together in the family room. For the first time in my entire life, the constant low-level anxiety I always felt regarding my family was completely gone. I did not have to worry about what passive-aggressive comment my mother was going to make at the next holiday dinner. I did not have to prepare myself for Vanessa showing up and parading her fake luxury life in my face. I had successfully excised the tumors from my life, and the healing process felt incredibly peaceful. By early evening, Malik was upstairs taking a warm bath, and I was in the kitchen wiping down the granite countertops. The sun had completely set, leaving the neighborhood dark and quiet. The silence was abruptly shattered by the sound of tires screeching violently in my driveway. I heard a car engine shut off aggressively, followed by the frantic slamming of a car door. Heavy, uncoordinated footsteps sprinted up the concrete walkway to my front porch. I did not panic. I simply dried my hands on a kitchen towel and walked calmly toward the foyer. The doorbell began ringing incessantly, echoing loudly through the house. I checked the security camera monitor mounted on the wall. Standing on my front porch, illuminated by the harsh yellow glow of the porch light, was my mother, Brenda. She did not look anything like the proud, arrogant woman who had marched into my house the night before to throw church flyers in my face. Her pristine Sunday suit was gone, replaced by a wrinkled, oversized sweater and sweatpants. Her hair, which was usually perfectly coiffed and sprayed into place, was completely disheveled, with wild strands sticking out in every direction. Her face was swollen and streaked with dark mascara tears. She looked exactly like a woman whose entire universe had just violently collapsed. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the heavy oak door open. I stood perfectly still in the doorway, keeping my posture tall and my expression entirely neutral. I did not invite her inside. Naomi, my mother, gasped the moment she saw me. She reached out with trembling hands, trying to grab my arms, but I took a deliberate step back, completely out of her reach. "Mom," I said, my voice steady and devoid of any emotion. "It is late. You should not be driving around in this state." She did not listen. She pushed her way past me into the foyer, stumbling slightly on the hardwood floor. She turned around to face me, and the sheer panic in her eyes was almost difficult to look at. The protective, arrogant wall she had built around herself for her entire adult life was completely shattered. "Vanessa called me." She sobbed, her voice cracking horribly. "She called me from a police precinct in Aspen. The local police arrested her, Naomi. They arrested your sister. She tried to leave the hotel without paying the luxury suite bill because her cards were all declined. When the hotel security detained her, they ran her information and found out there was already a federal warrant being processed for her arrest." I closed the front door slowly, leaning my back against the wood. "It sounds like the bank investigators work incredibly fast," I noted calmly. My mother stared at me, her mouth trembling. She could not comprehend how I was standing there so unaffected by the destruction of her favorite child. A detective from the Financial Crimes Unit called me right after I spoke to Vanessa. She cried, her voice rising into a hysterical pitch. He asked me if I knew where Trevor was. He told me Trevor is a fugitive wanted for massive tax evasion. He told me Vanessa is being held without bail because she is considered a flight risk. She is facing federal wire fraud charges, Naomi. She is going to be transferred to a federal holding facility." She let out a loud, agonizing wail that echoed off the high ceilings of my foyer. Her knees suddenly buckled completely, giving out beneath her. She collapsed right there on my hardwood floor, falling to her knees and burying her face in her hands. She wept with a loud, guttural sound that I had never heard come from her before. "You have to stop this, Naomi," she begged, looking up at me with red, swollen eyes. "You have to call the police and tell them to drop the charges. You have to call the bank and tell them you forgive the debt. I will pay you back. I will sell my house. I will cash out my retirement fund. I will give you every single penny I have, but you must withdraw the lawsuit. Your sister will go to state prison. I am begging you, she is your own blood. I looked down at the woman kneeling on my floor. I felt absolutely nothing. There was no pity. There was no lingering childhood desire to comfort her. I was looking at a woman who was only crying because the consequences of her own toxic behavior had finally arrived at her doorstep. She was not crying because I had been robbed. She was not crying because my son almost lost his college fund. She was crying because the golden child she had worshipped her entire life was finally being held accountable by a system she could not manipulate. "Stand up, Mom," I said, my voice low and authoritative. She shook her head vigorously, refusing to move. "No," she wailed, reaching out and gripping the fabric of my navy blue trousers. "I will not get up until you promise to save her. She is your sister, Naomi. She made a terrible mistake, but she does not belong in a prison cell. Trevor tricked her. He manipulated her into taking that money. She is a victim, too." I forcefully stepped backward, pulling my pant leg out of her desperate grip. I stood my ground, looking directly down into her eyes. I did not raise my voice, but every single word I spoke was heavy and sharp. "Do not you dare insult my intelligence," I warned her. Trevor did not trick her. Trevor was not even in the kitchen when she stole my phone. Vanessa made a calculated, malicious decision to rob me because she felt entirely entitled to my money. She thought I was beneath her. And you, Mom, you thought the exact same thing. "Naomi, please," my mother sobbed, wrapping her arms around her own chest. "I was wrong. I was so completely wrong about Trevor. I admit it. I let his flashy cars and his white skin blind me. I thought he was elevating our family. I wanted to believe Vanessa had finally made it to the top. I was a foolish old woman. Punish me, Naomi. Hate me for the rest of your life. But do not let them lock your sister in a cage. She will not survive it." I folded my arms across my chest, maintaining my absolute control of the space. "It is entirely out of my hands now, Mom," I explained, my tone completely clinical. "I did not press the federal charges. Chase Bank pressed the federal charges. Vanessa used their digital infrastructure to commit a major felony, and the bank took a $300,000 loss when the Internal Revenue Service seized the funds. You cannot sell your house to pay me back because the bank already restored my money. You have to deal with the federal government and a team of ruthless corporate lawyers, and they do not care about your tears." My mother stared at me, the blood draining completely from her face as the horrifying reality finally set in. She realized that her money, her manipulation, and her tears were completely useless against the massive federal machine Vanessa had triggered. She was entirely powerless. "You can fix this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You are smart, Naomi. You know how to talk to these corporate people. You have lawyers. Please, I am your mother. You have to help your family." I looked at her, perfectly maintaining my steady, dominant posture. I thought about all the years I spent sitting in my childhood bedroom crying because she refused to show up to my school events. I thought about the time I launched my first major cosmetics line and she skipped the launch party to go shopping with Vanessa. And I thought about last night when she stood in this exact same room and promised to destroy my reputation in the church simply because I dared to hold her favorite daughter accountable. I slowly shook my head. "Yesterday you said you disowned me, didn't you?" I asked, my voice echoing with a chilling, icy finality. "Why are you at a stranger's house crying today?" I left my mother sobbing on the floor of my foyer and simply walked back into my kitchen. I did not bother helping her up. I did not offer her a glass of water. After several agonizing minutes, she finally realized that her tears held absolutely no power over me anymore. I heard the heavy front door open and close, followed by the slow, quiet hum of her car engine starting and driving away. The toxic cloud that had hovered over my life for 32 years finally drifted out into the dark night and dissipated forever. The next morning, the bright Atlanta sun poured through the large bay windows of my home office. I sat at my sleek glass desk, feeling completely rejuvenated and entirely untouchable. I picked up my favorite gold pen and began signing my name across a thick stack of legal documents. I signed the commercial lease agreement for my brand new cosmetics warehouse. I signed the large vendor contracts for the upcoming holiday product launch. I opened my laptop and checked my business banking dashboard. The provisional credit from Chase Bank had officially cleared. All $312,000 had been fully restored to my account under their premium customer fraud protection policy. The banking corporation absorbed the massive loss from the IRS seizure, but they were not going to let it go unpunished. The fallout for my toxic family was swift and absolutely devastating. Through the rapid gossip pipeline of the church community, I learned exactly how far Vanessa had fallen. Trevor did not just run away from the hotel in Aspen to escape the federal tax collectors. He ran straight to the airport to meet his longtime mistress. He used the last bit of secret cash he had hidden away to buy 2 one-way tickets out of the country, leaving Vanessa completely stranded in the freezing snow to take the absolute full force of the federal banking charges alone. She was transported back to Georgia in handcuffs and was currently sitting in a federal holding cell. Because she executed the wire transfer herself, the district attorney was aggressively pushing for a mandatory minimum 5-year prison sentence for felony wire fraud. My mother Brenda was forced to face the ultimate public humiliation. The pristine colonial house she had proudly flaunted to her church friends for decades was suddenly listed for sale. She had to liquidate her entire retirement savings and put her beloved home on the market just to afford the exorbitant legal retainer for Vanessa's defense attorneys. The very community she had tried to poison against me completely turned their backs on her. The church board formally asked her to step down, citing the massive public scandal her family had caused. She had sacrificed her kind, hardworking daughter to protect a flashy thief, and in the end, she lost absolutely everything. I finished signing the last vendor contract and closed my leather folder with a satisfying thud. My cosmetics company was officially expanding, and my son Malik was completely secure. I stood up from my desk ready to take Malik to the park to celebrate our new beginning. Just as I grabbed my car keys, a series of loud, sharp knocks echoed from the front door. I walked out to the foyer and looked through the glass side panel. Standing on my porch in his full dress uniform was the local chief of police holding a thick manila envelope. I opened the door and he handed me the heavy envelope with a polite professional nod. It was the official federal witness summons. The United States government was formally calling me to testify against my sister in federal court, and I was absolutely ready to take the stand. I took the heavy manila envelope from the police chief and closed my front door. I walked back into my living room and stood in the center of the beautiful space I had worked so incredibly hard to build. For the first time in my entire life, I felt absolutely no guilt about setting a firm boundary. I felt no obligation to save people who had tried to destroy me. I looked around at the peaceful, quiet house, and then I looked directly at you. People always say that family is everything. They tell you that blood is thicker than water and that you are supposed to forgive your relatives no matter how terribly they treat you. But I learned the hard way that some blood carries a deadly poison, and you have to cut it out completely if you want to survive. You cannot let toxic people drag you down into their own miserable darkness just because you happen to share a last name or a childhood history. Vanessa is currently 36 years old, and she is standing trial in a federal courthouse completely penniless and entirely alone. The grand illusion of her high society life has been completely shattered and broadcasted for the entire world to see. She went from drinking champagne in first class to sitting in a cold holding cell, all because she felt entitled to the fruits of my labor. Trevor is still on the run, hiding somewhere overseas, like the absolute coward he always was. My mother is currently living in a tiny, cramped apartment, completely ostracized by the church community she once ruled with an iron fist. They gambled everything they had just to tear me down, and they lost it all. And me. My life has never been better. My cosmetics company just hit a brand new monthly sales record. The new commercial warehouse is fully operational and we are expanding our product line nationwide. I wake up every single morning with total peace in my heart, knowing that my son's future is completely secured. I know that I never have to apologize for my own success ever again. I built my empire with honesty and relentless hard work, and absolutely no one will ever be able to take that away from me. Malik came running out of the kitchen with a huge, bright smile on his face. He ran up to me and wrapped his little arms tightly around my waist, hugging me with all his might. I hugged him back, resting my chin on top of his head, and I smiled a genuine, deeply happy smile. The chaotic storm was finally over, and our beautiful days were just beginning. Before I end this story, I want to ask you a very serious question. Have you ever had to send your own family member to prison to reclaim justice? Let me know your story in the comments below. Stay strong, protect your peace, and never let anyone steal what you worked so hard to build.